Welcome to the Creator's Crypt, where creators from a wide range of genres spill secrets, drop hacks, and give us just a little access into their industry. So my first guest is Tricia Noel from TriStar Appearances, and she is a booking agent. And over here, this handsome gentleman with the beard. But Wynn, we just call him Wynn. Wynn is a guest security guy. So Wynn handles all the crazies, I guess you could put it. Whether you're guarding the crazies or protecting against the crazies, that's your world, right? I mean, is that safe to say?
Yep.
Well, Wynn is suddenly really talkative. So, all right. Okay, and I've owned a con, and so I know intimately all the issues that go into putting one together, the operational things. I also have appeared as a guest at a con, to over 60 cons. I want to go ahead and just be upfront that Trish is my agent, and Wynn is her security, which means my security. So. So we know each other really well. Trish, we'll start with you. Kind of give me a little bit of background on what a booking agent does. And Wynn is already attentive.
Well, basically, we are the liaison between the guest and the convention. So we do most of the negotiations for what the guest wants, what type of accommodations they need, and all of the go-between between them and the promoters for the convention. And trying to make the contract work and as easy and seamless as possible. And make sure that everybody has a great time.
There's the whole negotiating of money. There's, dealing with the funds transfer between fan and guest. And there's a lot more to it, than just those negotiations and liaison.
That kind of dumbs it down, but...
Don't dumb it down. This is for people who are trying to get into these businesses and need to know from your perspective what they're going to face. So, definitely let it all fly because, a lot of times people get into this stuff and they don't have the first clue about what's involved and they're sometimes getting into it for the wrong reasons. So definitely let it fly.
It can be as easy and as simple as just making the connections and then getting a contract signed to having to write the contract completely. Because a lot of conventions starting out don't have the first clue as to how to write a contract. And then it comes to the agent to have to put the contract together. And you want the contract to be as solid as it can be for your client, but you also want it to be something that the convention's going to agree to. So you have to kind of basically take a crash course in paralegal.
Or have one on staff.
Yes. Which luckily I have a good friend who's a paralegal, so I kind of, wrote one up and I sent it to her and I was like, hey, from a non-professional standpoint, can you give this a once-over and let me know what you think?
Yeah, because when you're talking about these agreements... There has to be a caveat if someone like the guest is suddenly booked to do a film or called back to do reshoots. So there has to be an out and there has to be like a compensation back to the convention if that's the case. And so it's really detailed. These agreements are
I think our
detailed.
Simplest contract is 4 pages.
Wynn does the celebrity guest security. And so, why don't you hit us with a little bit of stuff that you have to deal with on a daily basis?
The hardest part with what I do is there's a fine line of handling this without becoming a jerk and hurting somebody until the point where you have to raise it above my level when you're at like the authority level. It's a fun balance to find, letting the attendees have their fun, get their celebrity, get their fanboy on, and allowing the celebrity guests to feel safe that there's a buffer in between, but not ruining the experience for both of them.
It's not just at the table. It's not just watching the line. he has to escort these guys around. So usually to panels. So you've got to take these guys through the crowd and handle the crowd while you're transporting them. You're supposed to, meet me at my hotel room with a cup of coffee before we go down, which you fail at on a regular basis. I just want to.
Wherever Tricia's on here, that's our fault.
That was Scott's job this year.
I don't have a
that was Scott's job. Yeah, so, I mean, there's way more to it than just, and again, don't feel free to just let it fly, because a lot of people might see it as just bodyguarding, but
I've been doing this type for almost 13 years, and Tricia's one of the first people I worked with when we worked back for another company way back when. But when you get to be known as the big guy in the room, you'll have other companies like, hey, are you busy right now? Can you escort my guest down to their meeting room? And I usually check in with Trish. And for the most part, a lot of the handler groups, a lot of the agencies, they get along, right? There's always the backside politics, which I will never interfere with. But when it comes to making sure the guest and the handlers are taken care of, I have no problem jumping over and escorting somebody to another hotel. And you've seen the crowds at Dragon Con. I mean, It's pea soup, right? And most of the time, the great thing about me is I'm 6'9", 300 and blah, blah, blah pounds. But when a celebrity stands behind me and I'm moving through the crowd, most everybody sees me, and they don't see who's behind me. And I'm usually polite about moving through the crowd. Pardon me, excuse me, and everybody's like, oh shit, somebody's coming. And we can usually move through the crowd fairly well. I've had to escort everybody from Doc Brown to John DeLance, who plays Q in Star Trek. We've taken you all over the all over the hotels. But again, you're trying not to ruin the experience for the attendee, but you have to make sure that the celebrity guest is safe. They're not stopped. They're not held up. They are where they need to be. And then once you drop them off in either a panel room, I'm usually hanging back, and I am watching the crowd. I stop listening to the panel. I watch the crowd. I watch for anybody who looks like they're either going to get up and rush, or they looked... You can't say different because everybody looks different.
Yeah.
But the one who doesn't look like they belong is usually the one that I need to keep an eye on. And if something arises, I know who authority-wise to get a hold of to make sure, A, nothing happens, or if something does happen, it's de-escalated very fast.
Especially at conventions, usually the one thing that you just have to look out for is like the one person who doesn't look like they're having a good time. Because 9 times out of 10, people are just there to have a good time. Mm-hmm. So if somebody looks like they're not having a good time, that's somebody that you need to keep an eye on.
Well, those are the ones that they're easy to spot, but you have to, again, be careful. But they will stand out like a sore thumb. And everybody just starts to keep an eye on that way. But the only person you never bring attention to is the celebrity guest, because you don't want to raise the alarm on that side. But usually you'll let, like, their handler know. So if something happens, they can just, hey, we need to go really quick. Right? Yeah, and you don't want to spook anybody.
And so you brought this up, and it was going to be something we were going to talk about later, but poaching, So between, and this happens from a con owner's perspective as well. So you either have invited guests to your convention, and you've got another con coming in to poach them for theirs because they can't get a hold of the agent on the phone. So they'll come into other conventions and they'll start poaching your guest list right from underneath you. I know that happens with agents, and I know that happens with security. So how do you guys deal with it? We'll go ahead and start with Trish.
Well, honestly, our policy is we have a non-exclusivity, and our philosophy about things is we're in it not for the overall bottom dollar, I guess you would say. Myself and my partners are in this business because it's something that we grew up loving. We came from the fan side of it, and we just absolutely loved conventions. We loved the whole idea of it. We wanted people to get the same type of experience that we did. And we feel like if we can't do what's best for our clients, then if somebody else can do better, more power to them. But we have also found that through that philosophy, 9 times out of 10, we keep our clientele.
Yeah, because, I mean, a lot of times it sounds like, the grass is greener and you get over there and you find out that there's a dumpster fire. And so what about you? So we've already heard a little bit about from Wynn's side of the how, like, they'll poach him because he's the most fortified individual in the room. He's an entity among himself, yeah. So, and they'll spot him and they'll like, hey, can we borrow you for a few minutes? No, this has nothing to do with that camera we got up in the hotel room. This is something we need you to transport somebody around. I don't know about the things you do on your personal time. I just, just keep it professional.
Hey, sometimes what happens at conventions stays at conventions,
No, whatever happens at conventions always stays at conventions.
Yeah. So, all right. So you're talking about like being asked to do things in addition to your duties, with TriStar appearances, and usually everything's copacetic and you do that. But what if there's a group that you just don't want to work with, but you're working with all the others? I mean, is there ever been? Yeah.
I will say this. So I've been working, and I'm usually just, when I'm not in line control of the lines, I'll do a loop around, like, we'll just take Dragon Con. I'll do a loop around the Walk of Fame, right? And there's usually a group, I know who they are, and
you don't like
sometimes
them.
they're just a little pushy. Well, they're a little pushy.
Okay.
Yeah. And usually they'll come up, hey, we need to do this. Are you free? Just to be politely, it's like, no, I'm not. I've got my guest. We're going to be going somewhere. I've got to be back at this time. If I do this, I won't be able to make that. And they're my first priority. I appreciate the asking me. If I know anybody else, usually if my friend Kevin's, I'll push Kevin off onto him. But more than likely, I just be polite and just dodge around it. A little bit of tact. The one thing, and I know this, is regardless of how you feel about somebody, how you disagree with their methods or the way they encroach on your area, let them be the first one to ignite the dynamite, not you. Because in the end of the day, people are watching everybody. Agents are watching every agent. Talent's watching every agent. The con's watching everything going on, and they will all talk about it. And it's not just one con. It will spread to nearby cons, and you'll get a name of, man, I don't like that guy. That guy he goes off on people when they don't want to, I've seen it happen with people where, somebody gets upset. I ain't doing that job. Well, I ain't seen that guy anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So there's ways of handling it, and then there's ways of just not saying a thing. Just completely ignore them. Oh, I didn't hear you. It's too noisy in here. Sorry.
I didn't hear you. Plus, I'm way up here.
Yeah, it takes a while for the sound to come up.
And there's a group. So when I have never, it's unnerving, but Wynn has a group, and they come together, and suddenly they're these giants that are cresting the mountain. They're like a mountain, and Wynn is the short one, and
yeah,
and you're just
it's very intimidating when you're 5'2".
Yeah, I think I don't care. You're under 6 feet. It's intimidating to watch. I mean, what kind of movies are they making in the hotel room? That's all I want to know.
Tall ones.
Tall ones. Tall tales.
Yeah, they all just stand at the elevator doors and tell people to bring them shrubberies before they can get on the elevator.
So, that's come up in 2 different podcasts now. I don't lie. It keeps coming up. Not shrubbery particularly,
Just Monty Python references?
Monty Python in general. I think the last one was I Spit in Your General Direction was the last.
Same movie.
Yeah, same movie, yeah.
None
But
of
it just
my
keeps
favorite
coming up.
movie.
No kidding. Well, I'm a little disappointed in Trish because she was playing the political card, and that's not what we're about. Okay, so I would ask her about the poaching on her side and if she had a story, but she has already decided that she's going to be the nice person in this group, and I'm the asshole.
I witnessed it.
You
I know the
witnessed it?
story. I don't really care. I watched an agent walk over to her talent and blatantly ask him, "You should be part of my agency." In front of her, who was sitting right next to her, and she goes. And everybody went. And no one answered her. Everybody acted like, seriously, did that just happen?
What the hell,
And
Trish?
she just walked away. And guess what? It's like, people got brass
yeah,
balls.
they
They
do.
do.
Yeah.
They got balls. But the thing is it's rude as hell. Like, again, for like I said, the most part, the agencies do get along. There has been some that have showed up and disappeared. There have been some that are powerhouses, and the people who run those, some say, well, they're very nice. Some say they were spawn of the devil. But guess what? It's all who the convention wants to bring in and who that comes through. So, yeah, you sit there on your guard, and there's a time when you go, well, I'm not taking your shit anymore. And then it usually happens off the floor.
You know, and to be honest, from an owner's point of view, like, I mean, when you're a smaller convention, you kind of, you wear all the hats, just like you guys do with, you know, with the booking, and you don't know who you got to talk to all the time. All I'm going to say is it was an individual representing a village person, okay? And called me and asked me if I was interested. We had been interested earlier, but there was a scheduling conflict or whatever, and we couldn't get this person. And so we just had given up. And I swear to you, like 2 weeks, maybe a week before the convention actually started, they called back and said, "Hey, listen, discounted rate. They're opening up, you know, their schedule opened up. Are you still interested?" And yeah, I'm interested. I'm just going to say it. Fuck yeah, I'm interested, you know? And so we got them, and I was like over the moon, you know? But it turns out that the person representing them was just some buddy and didn't know what they were doing. And I kept questioning. Because as a guest of a convention, you know, I've learned that there's certain way things go, all right? And when I have an agent telling me that this individual is willing to fly economy, like extra economy, right? And that they found a flight for them. All I have to do is pay for it. It's in they found it on one of those bargain basement, you know, booking sites, and they just need to be picked up at the airport and blah blah blah. Now everything was on the up and up. I mean, it wasn't like, okay, I'm starting to get worried, you know, what's actually happening here. But we ended up getting the guest. But the problem was the guest wasn't crazy about any of this shit. I mean, he was flying suddenly in the luggage compartment of the aircraft, you know, and there was no, there was nothing that was being done, you know, for, you know, things that he was going to need when he arrived, you know, and things like that. There was just none of that. It was so rushed, you know, and I kept referring to this guy as his agent. Your agent, he's like, I'm very sorry, but this is what your agent told me. And he just kept losing his mind. He's like, this isn't my fucking agent. This is just a buddy of mine who made a phone call and blah, 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 blah. I don't know. You know, I don't know who's representing you. All I know is I was contacted by a representative of you, and now I'm trying to make a deal. I'm just trying to make a deal, man. From my perspective, I don't know who to call. You know, you're in that situation where you don't know, like, who you're supposed to be talking to. You just assume that the person you're talking to is the right one. I've had another agent. So this individual says that she's representing Megan Fox, but it turns out she's brokering this through several other agents. Now, does this sound familiar at all, Trish?
Yes.
In general, the practice.
Oh, yes. No, I can tell you a similar story that I had.
Well, I mean, so you don't know who to friggin' believe, and
Yeah.
you know, so you make mistakes as, and that's something I feel like you will continue to make as a convention owner if that's what you decide to do. If that's why you're watching the podcast, and you want to find out how to do this. This is something that I don't know that you'll ever get away with unless you're dealing with one or two particular agents, and that's it, which kind of really limits your ability to book people.
So, even from an agent perspective, when it comes to brokering, you have to be very, very careful. So we as an agency made an agreement to broker with another agency where we were going to pitch their clients in addition to ours, because a lot of times if you have clients from a certain show, it helps when you have more clients from the same show to try and get them into a convention together. So if you can get more cast members, like if you have Star Trek people or Stargate people, if you have 6 or 8 of them, sometimes it's better to try and get them all together into the same show. So if you only have 3 or 4 on your roster, and you have another agency that has 4 or 5, and you merge them and pitch them all together, you have better chances. So we made a brokerage agreement with another talent agency, and we were brokering their clients. They were supposedly brokering ours. And I happened to get one of their guests into another convention, and I contacted the person that we had made the brokerage agreement with, and I was like, hey, I got client X, a contract for this convention. I need to get in touch with client X to make sure that this person is available. And got told that this agency didn't even have contact information for the client because they themselves were brokering that client from somebody else. And had never told us this. And I'm like, what? How did you give me somebody's information when you didn't even have their information to get contact with them? Now I have a contract pending for a client that I don't even know how to get in touch with. Everything ended up working out in the long run, and it ended up that this client didn't have an exclusive contract with anyone, so he's now on our roster now as well. But, I mean, it could have been a disaster.
I don't know how you vet agents necessarily, unless, of course, you're going to be going down that road where you're only working with certain booking agents. And, and again, that limits you because, yeah, you can piggyback to a certain extent. But now you're talking, like you were saying and like I was saying, there could be 3 piggybacks down the road. Mm-hmm. And who the hell are you actually paying? And when that guest gets here, they've now are so disconnected from the invitation and what to be expected that they're bitching at you as the convention owner because you haven't fulfilled the needs that they feel like they needed, but you think that you have because you've got this agreement. And, so these are, in my opinion, these are things when you're getting started with a convention, as a booking agent, as, guest security, that you you need to know the dirty crazy that goes on. Not necessarily that it's meant to be, underhanded, but it's there.
Oh, yeah, there is that element.
Yeah, it's sort of frowned upon, but it's also how business gets done. That was another question I was going to bring up that was mainly for Trish, which was the payment aspect. I mean, a lot of people, especially if you've never run a convention before, or been intrinsically involved in the transaction, you don't know that there are multiple ways that guests ask to be paid. And when you're a con like Dragon Con, you're powerful enough that you can pretty much set the ground rules. But when you're a smaller con that's just coming up, you got to play by the rules of the agents and things like that. You can be as bullheaded as you want, but if you want those guests, you're going to have to bend. What are those payment methods? As Trish is about to describe the difference between a guarantee and appearance fee, Wynn and I start comparing beards and mustaches. Just sort of doing one of these on camera. You know,
Be even
pucker the
better
lips.
if you got your trimmer out right now.
It's in the other
No,
room, and it makes
that's
way
just
too much
really
noise
messy.
for the microphone.
Yeah. Sounds like something else if it's not on screen.
And back to those movies in the hotel room.
So
Trish, you're
there's
on.
actually 3 types.
Oh, there's 3 types. Am I missing out?
There's 3 types.
Son of a bitch.
There's there's a flat appearance fee. At which point you are given a flat fee for appearing at the convention, and that's it. You don't collect any money for autographs or anything else. You sign X amount of autographs for the convention, and it's up to a certain number, and you don't collect anything. Usually it's like 250 or something along those lines, sometimes up to 500. And it's a flat fee depending on what's negotiated. Depending on who the actor is, it could be more autographs, but then the fee's usually higher too. And it, compensates for, but it also gives them like a drastically reduced rate for those autographs compared to what the normal per autograph fee would normally be.
Because there's no split.
Right. Then you have an appearance fee, which is they're getting X amount of money for appearing at the convention, doing panels and this and that. And then they can also collect, in excess of that for signing autographs, photo ops, that sort of thing, which is like the split type of deal. So they are getting an appearance fee for showing up, but then they're also getting whatever they make for autographs. And then you have the guarantee, which is when they are guaranteed X amount of dollars for showing up and signing autographs, which is the most common that you'll find. And that usually ranges anywhere from, $2,000 to $100,000.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, some of
Or
these
if you're
guests, I mean, there were some guests that we were looking at that we knew that they were going to be big names and we knew that they were going to be pricey. But we were approaching $250,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say depending on who it is, some of them are.
And so there's some problems with that. There's some bonuses and problems from a con owner's perspective. Some of it has to do with there's an attachment or an addendum that goes along with. Okay, so it's not just that this guest is asking for we'll call it a guarantee or whatever. I don't think it really matters. As long you have to, one way or another, as a con owner, you have to pay for that guest, and if it's through photo ops or if it's through personal attention or autographs, you have to make up the cost of that guest.
Right.
In a lot of cases, you're available for all 4 days, all 3 days, the entire con, but a lot of these guests will have this high number associated with them. And like, for instance, we tried to book an individual. We'll say that this person was a member of Stranger Things. Okay. And this guest wanted $65,000 as an appearance fee. Well, you have to make up that $65,000. How are you going to do it? Well, you're going to stretch it over a couple of days, but this guest added something to it that made it even more insane. And they were only going to be there for 1 day. And now you have a guest who wants $65,000, but he's only there for 1 day. The con is open for 8, maybe 9 hours. Let's just say it's a 10-hour convention. But there's another caveat, because he needs breaks, he needs lunchtime, and he will only work 8 hours. So now, somehow, in the space of 8 hours, a convention in 1 day has to generate the $65,000 plus hotel, plus car service, plus flight for this individual. And, it seems like it might be doable, but then we're talking about lines and unhappy attendees because they only got to spend a brief second with the celebrity. It was a sign and go, and you've got these attendees that are complaining about that. But if they don't move through that line quick enough, then you're on the hook for whatever you couldn't make.
Right.
If you couldn't move that line fast enough so that you could get everybody through and make $65,000, now you've only made 30. You have to figure out where, the rest of that money is coming from. And you usually have to do it fast because in a lot of cases, money transfers happen at the convention, not or the very last day, which is also kind of difficult because not all your revenue is in until the Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday when all those electronic transactions have gone through, so you have to have cash on hand to take care of all this. And it makes it a bit of a nightmare in that particular respect. So it's not just the appearance fee and the guarantee, and now you're saying there's another version of the appearance fee, but how much time is that guest going to make himself available at, to the convention?
I don't remember, Trish, were you there that year we had the guest who was doing free autographs?
Yes. I worked with his brother.
He did. That's okay. He sat there. He was only there for a limited time, which made we were his security escort everywhere, and we were also line management. Which fun part is you really got to hone in your line management skills because people will stand there for an hour or so, and they were like, "What if I got to go to the bathroom? What if I want to eat?" So you would you would talk to everybody at the same time and say, "Hey guys, everybody's here. You're all waiting for them. So tell you what, if you're cool with somebody going to the bathroom and coming back and getting their spot, they'll be cool with you doing the same thing." And you watched everybody get food for everybody. You watched everybody get along in the line, which made the experience getting his autograph 10 times better. And he had a great time too, but he didn't charge a single thing. They paid for his room in his hotel and his flight and all that stuff, but he did not charge for a single autograph.
One of the best parts of our con was Amy Hill. I don't know if you guys know who Amy Hill is. 51st Dates. She was the waitress.
Yeah.
She's also in Preacher. She's in a million things. Cat in the Hat. Amy just one day decided she found a bakery that I didn't even know about in the city that I live in, right? And had them deliver freshly made donuts, and she's passing them out to attendees. Just like, hey, you want a donut? Hey, you want a donut? I was doing an interview with the local news, and Amy Hill just comes walking up with the donuts. Hey, you want a donut? I'm like, are you kidding me? This is our convention. Amy Hill walks up with donuts. I mean, come on, And you can be that friendly. But ours was, again, like the one you were saying, it was the best convention that no one attended. We had difficulty because, and this is another big thing that you got to worry about as a convention owner, if this is something that you want to get into, is creating a convention in the wake of DashCon, Fire Festival, and now the Willy Wonka Experience.
Oh, I saw that.
Right? Nobody wants to trust conventions anymore, especially if you're new, because they don't know what they're paying for and what they're going to get on the end. And I don't feel like our tickets were way expensive. I think our most expensive tickets were the VIP tickets, and they were like $60 to $80, and it got you access to everything. But everyone was waiting. They were like, well, let me see how the second year goes. Well, newsflash, if you don't support the convention its first year, there won't be a second year. And there wasn't a second year for us because, well, there are a bunch of things that kind of came into play. That issue with, hey, we're going to see how it turns out, and we'll come the second year. Well, the second year was also the COVID year. And, that just pretty much killed it. And so there was no recovering from that. But yeah, these are, so now you're dealing with these crooked cons that are, ruining it for new conventions, because I can't tell you how many times I had to address the Fire Festival incident as we were building up interest for our convention, whether it was the news, a paper, a local person. I know at least once a day someone was asking me or mentioning the Fire Festival when I was talking about our convention. And it's a damn nightmare, and it's something that's not going to go away. So if you're opening a con in the next couple of years, your Fire Festival is going to be the Willy Wonka Experience, but the Fire Festival will still be there, and so will DashCon. I mean, DashCon is basically infamous, you know, the ball pit in the middle of the room and nothing else, you know. I mean, come on, you know.
They had a Nightmare Convention 2015, Daytona Beach. I forget the name of the con, but I got asked to go work it. I got to sit with Daniel Logan, which was freaking awesome. But they had some really, really good guests there. Really big convention right on Daytona Beach. At the end of the con, no one really got their payout unless you were fighting for it. And the worst of all is the people who got asked, if you were the first one to register your room, you got stuck with the bill for your room.
Wow. You know,
luckily I wasn't on the room. My name wasn't on the room, but the person who I was staying with, they got stuck with the bill, and everybody was upright complaining. Agents were going furious. People were just up in arms, like, how can you do this? And hey, you overspent, didn't have anything, and it's a bust. So yeah, if you're gonna plan a convention, like you said, you got to be ahead of the rumor mill. You got to show proof of what you're planning on setting up. You got to market, advertise on all your social media. You got to be as transparent as you can, as far as you can to the public. And you got to find a way to generate interest, with also the fact that there's pretty much a convention every weekend of every weekend of all year long. Somewhere there's a con.
See, and we had, if you feel like when you're starting your convention, if you feel like your saving grace is going to be sponsorship, I mean, dude, just forget about it. Like, like for instance, here where I'm at, the other con in the area had burned so many bridges with so many potential sponsors, that we couldn't get a single sponsor. So when that con kicked off, that was like me opening my wallet, and I'm not even exaggerating. It was paid for by us because we couldn't get a single sponsor. So you have to gauge what that sponsorship field looks like in your area. How many people were asking these guys for sponsorship? I mean, what are you going to give them in return for sponsorship? I mean, our sponsorship deck was amazing. I mean, we were giving them access. I mean, you know what? We didn't stop short. We actually did it. At one point, for X amount of dollars, we would have had the guest wearing the goddamn T-shirt with your company's logo on it behind the table. And we had made arrangements that in certain guests, agreements, that they were okay with that. And they were. And so the other thing I think you need to look at is, what celebrity guests do you know that are your friends, that are willing to do things for as little as possible, and maybe just for flight and hotel and the experience of being there, and whatever they make they keep. You got to be flexible in all these ways. I mean, you're probably going to need to focus on a convention that's like 500 people, 500 to 1,000 people, and that's still a big convention. Our convention was slotted to be between 4,000 and 6,000 people, but we also couldn't overwhelm the city we lived in. The infrastructure of the city could not handle any more than that influx between 7,000 and 10,000 people. And if there are other things going on in that weekend, you don't want to be the one who overwhelmed the city to the point where there was crimes that were happening because there wasn't enough police or whatever, So you need to think good and hard about the number that you want and budget for that number, and yeah. Pimp your friends. You got celebrity friends who are willing to do it. Pimp them, man. I did. I was like shameless about, some of, because I had been on, I think at this point, I had 50 convention appearances at this point. So I had amassed a group of friends that I had reoccurringly seen on the convention circuit. And I was talking to them, man. I was like, I need your help. because I can't afford some of these sumbitches. They're just too much. And I'm glad that special caveat that Trish was just talking about, that third option wasn't necessarily in the cards for us. It just seemed like it was either a guarantee or an appearance fee, and there wasn't this mix of the two, which seems just ludicrous to me. But I mean, I get it from the guest side as well. So
I see more. I'm not going to say the name, but the name of the convention is everywhere. Different cities, it's like a big company that had bought up all these little ones and put their name on conventions and are running them in these cities now. Because it seems like that is everywhere, and I would think that would be something. If you're a startup, beware of the monster that lurks, that has the pull power to go.
But also be aware of it in the sense that you're going to benefit from it, because there is con excitement. I mean, those megacons, they bring in the people, but at the same time, if you go to those megacons, you hear on a regular basis that there is as much of a desire to have those smaller microcons as there is to the megacons. The megacons you go to, it's like one massive party, but sometimes you just want to go to these conventions where you're not so lost in the crowd that you can't do anything because the lines are just too goddamn long. So there is a market for microcons, and we had established that, and the other thing I would suggest is follow that lead, because when we put our con together, we marketed it with the city that we lived in. So we the name of our convention was tailored to the motto of our city, our city's little phrase. We got the city involved as much as we possibly could. We even had the mayor of our city in a superhero costume that I built running around the streets with our logo on his chest. I mean, we did about everything we could to try to advance our game, I guess, but there's always going to be that element out there that's just going to rip the rug from underneath you. And there's so much shit that you have to deal with. Like, here's the one. I want to throw this at Trish. What are some of the no-nos? Like, some of the no-nos. Like, I don't even want to call them ethical, mishaps, or like, okay, here's an example. When you're working on the set, you do not go into other areas. Like, the special effects guys have their place, the makeup people have their place, the production has their place, and unless you're invited into those areas for some kind of work effort, you don't go in there, you don't cross in there, you don't go watch the scene get recorded. I mean, everybody has a job to do. You certainly do not go up and ask for autographs from the actors. I mean, stuff like that. Things are so catastrophic that if you were to do them, that essentially you're going to get blacklisted in your own industry.
From an agent perspective, if I needed something from another person's client, I would go to that agent. Like, if there was another client that I wanted an autograph of or something else, I would go up to that agent and be like, hey, is there any way? And I've had agents come up to me and be like, hey, I always wanted, so-and-so's autograph. I have no problem making arrangements for that to happen. One of our best things about conventions is making connections for people, whether they be fans, agents, or actor to actor, or voice actor to actor. We had several voice actors that were next to us that didn't have agents or handlers with them that we just started BSing with and, built up a good camaraderie with. Lou Diamond Phillips was on the other side of the curtain from us. And they were geeking out every single morning that, like, while we were doing setup, they could hear him doing setup on the other side. And they were too chicken shit to just go over and say hello to him. They were like, we can't do that. We're just voice actors. He's Lou Diamond Phillips. And so one of the last days that he was there, I just walked around with my coffee and I went up to his agent and I was like, hey. And like I said, I'm not their agent. I have never seen any of them since this event, and I walked over and I was like, hey, I'm over there with these people. Made like I was their agent. And I was like, they'd really just like to say hello to him. Can he just, poke his head through the curtain? And he busted up through the curtain and was like, "Hey, you guys are being too loud over here, blah, blah, blah." And literally, I thought one of the girls was going to faint. Like,
That's why you haven't seen him since. Jeez. Well, and that's how it happened with Gil and I. I was like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm a damn reality show puke.
Yeah,
I'm not,
see?
We poked you. We poked you. We poked and prodded you to get something to say something to him.
And now I can't get Gil to shut up.
And now you've got a full commercial on, him trying to get people to buy your book.
I know, that was so great.
That's the funny thing.
Buy his
from being
book.
secure.
I'm going to insert that. From
our point of view, when the do's and don'ts is don't overtalk. You know, don't start. Well, I thought about being an actor too, and I got my, or hey, I was in this because we know people. Trish and I know people who were in the industry, and because they did something very small, they thought they were considered one of them, and pretty much nuked every bridge that he came across.
Wow.
By acting that way. Oh yeah. And I kept trying to tell him, like, dude, don't do this. No, I worked with him. I know them. And like, no, stop. Don't. Just not here. Not time and place. It's one thing if the guest brings it up.
Yeah.
Right? But for you to interject that and go that route. So if you're working security or you're handling or you're starting the convention, understand the dialogue and conversation you have with these guests to where you don't put them on the back defensive going,
oh, yeah.
Hey, how can I get out of here? Right?
No.
Because that's a huge no-no.
I totally agree. But, again, you still, I think coming in, if you don't know where you are in the pecking order as a guest, that's kind of on you.
See, in the order, especially when it comes to the fans, your list is made up by the fans.
Exactly.
Right? And I don't care. You can be Robert Downey Jr., but I'm telling you there, if the guy who was voicing the Animaniacs shows at the con and there's more of that, guess what? He's gonna beat you out every time.
Yeah.
So if you got somebody who's into the visual effects, the makeup artist, the creature effects, and that's their world, you're the A-lister.
Yeah.
Not anybody else. You're the A-lister. So your pecking order is also brought in by the fans. Those people who realize that they are there for the fans and are going to do everything they can for the fans, they're the A.
Yeah.
Those people who are there for themselves, who think I'm better than all this, yeah, you're going to get humbled really quick by those fans.
Yeah. And the other thing, and I don't know how often you have to deal with this, Trish, but when you're talking about a guest that is difficult, like we had a guest who we paid thousands of dollars for, who never left his room, and when he did leave his room, he was sitting in that chair so standoffish that attendees wouldn't even approach him.
Luckily, most of my clients are not like that. I have had a past client who was rather difficult, to put it nicely.
Don't put it nicely. That's not what this is about. That's not what this is about.
With that particular
Does this
client,
smell like
it
chloroform?
was daily phone calls at whatever hour she demanded, even when there wasn't anything booked.
Wow.
When there was something booked, there was constantly something that needed to be discussed, even when there wasn't something that needed to be discussed. It was an interesting struggle. And when she was at an event, even when one of us was there, it was a constant call to the other partner about something, because everything would be fine to the partner that was there. But then it would be calls to the other partner complaining about things that were not up to her standards. And it was absolutely crazy.
Wow.
And yeah, we did not keep that client long.
I had a high profile guest that called me, no shit, in the middle of the night and told me that their pillow in their hotel wasn't comfortable, and oh no, their mattress in the hotel wasn't comfortable. And I'm a con owner. I'm not the agent, you know. And I know that his agent wasn't there, and I sort of step into that role in a way. But I mean, dude, call the front desk.
I was gonna say that's not much that you can do about that. That's
really sometimes the audacity that comes with, and this is stuff that you're gonna have to know. I mean, I keep hammering away at that. It's like, you know, the whole point of this podcast is to teach people who want to get into something, you know, a little bit of the information from the insider's point of view, so that you have a better working knowledge of what you're getting into. And while it is fun, and I have a blast at conventions, I mean, I had a blast running that convention, even with the chaos, you know, there is still, you know, so much that you can't possibly prepare for. There is no goddamn book that's going to help you through it. There's no way to foresee everything that, you know. And, you know, let's kind of wrap it up in that way, but with a story.
I have dealt with conventions that ended on Sunday where clients were never given their return flights. And I have to call and some of these were not even my clients. It was just people that we were hanging out with because they didn't have agents, and we were there for that weekend, and we were sitting down having dinner with the whole group, and the one guy, you know, it was like, you know, so what time's everybody heading to the airport tomorrow, trying to find out if everybody's riding together. And the one guy's like, I don't know. I don't have my return flight yet. Everybody's going home tomorrow. What do you mean you don't have your return flight yet?
How does that even happen? Because you booked them at the same time. I mean,
this particular convention didn't, because they didn't have all the money at the same time, so they were trying to book things as they got the money.
So it was. I wouldn't even get on a plane without a return flight. I mean,
and that was what we had done for our clients. We told them when they sent the one-way tickets to the convention that they would not be getting on the flight to go there without return tickets booked. And apparently that was not how everybody had handled it.
So that's another one. Make sure that when you're booking a celebrity guest that you have a return flight booked at the exact same time you're booking that just makes sense to me, because it's not like they're cheaper. Moving. They're not moving into the con. We just want to
bring you out here and keep you.
Yeah. Just, you know, we figured you just want to, you're gonna see the scenery and you're just gonna decide to stay. Jesus, you know that. I had a friend who has a con that this one particular year they had booked at a new hotel. And the new hotel wasn't even ready. When I say it wasn't ready, I mean 24 hours before the con, they're still putting the carpeting in. They're still putting the ceiling tiles in. They're running fucking electrical through the ballroom where this con was going to be held. And I just kept looking at him, and I was like, Todd, Jesus. You know, and you could see he was trying to keep it together. He's just grinning. He's like, everything's going to be okay. I'm like, oh, shit, he's going to go down. You know, and I just kept thinking, how are they going to have all the carpet installed? How are they going to have all that? And this was a big hotel. Oh, and they changed the name of the damn hotel just before the morning of the con. So it went from hotel blah, blah, blah to hotel blah, blah, blah. And no one could find the goddamn hotel. Unless you were like a regular, you know, who lived in the city of, I think it was like Addison or something like that. You know, unless you knew where that was, you know, you didn't know what hotel you were going to. I mean, drivers taking the guests to the wrong place. You had attendees who couldn't find the thing. Vendors were completely lost. I mean, like, I'm watching this guy. I'm like, this was a master class in control. It's insane. It is a crazy ass business. I'm going to let you guys off the hook, and I just want to thank you guys for coming on and talking shit and, you know, sharing your stories, because I honestly feel like this information is going to help open somebody's eyes to what they really need to be planning for, that out of the box insane experience that they're about to step into, where there are no rules. You can't build a flow chart for this, because some of the shit that's going to happen you can't possibly prepare for. I mean, there's so much shit I wanted to talk to you guys about. Like, Trish, you're like, we were talking about some of the things that you do. You were running everyone at Eureka's table, making sure that the square readers were running, the credit cards were going through, there was cash on hand for transactions. You were overseeing all of that they had all the materials that they need, that they were making their schedules and their panels and so on, all the while taking care of everything that I needed. And then you had this freeloader next to me who was also taken care of, that
And
appreciated
David.
every bit of it.
David,
What's that?
too. We had David Nickel too.
Wow, you had David too? That was insane. So that's what I'm saying. You guys are dealing with more than just booking people. I mean, there's so much.
Herding cats on fire.
It really is. And so if you took anything away from this podcast, that's what you should take. Herding cats on fire, and you don't know what direction they're going, but all of them are heading for a dry field. Okay.
Yeah.
All of them. Comic-Cons are a part of our culture, and they have been for decades. It seems like there's a new convention popping up every year, and a lot of people want to get in on the money that they seem to make. They also want to get their chance at rubbing elbows with celebrities. These are definitely not the reasons to get into this business. And that's what I hope to get across in this episode, was some background information from insiders who have been there and can shed some light on some aspects of the business that you may not have been aware of. I'd like to thank Tricia, Noel, and Wynn Boggs for coming out for the conversation. I feel like the insights from a booking agent's perspective and guest security's perspective were invaluable. I'd like to thank our producers over at the Collector's Maze Network, with a specific shout out to Rixie Ray and Keith Baldwin. And as always, a huge thank you to Gil Corzo for providing the theme music for our show. This podcast was recorded on Riverside FM and edited on OpenShot.